Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks and at Twitter, Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at halfwall_hockey, at my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. Shang, what do we got this week?
Got a very exciting show. We have Chris Peters. Everyone knows him. NHL Draft Prospects analyst for FloHockey, who gives an honest, unflinching look at San Jose Sharks prospects that performed at the World Juniors. There are Sharks prospects that he likes a lot, and some he doesn't like so much.
It's an excellent interview with Chris. It was awesome to pick his brain a little bit about what he saw on the ice.
Keeping it real.
Yeah, keeping it real. But there is a lot of hype in there. So, not as much hype as we give, I think, but there is some hype in there for sure. We got a few topics today. We're going to cover just the losses and the wins this week. The win, I should say. We're going to cover a Chmelevski trade rumor. Wiesblatt undergoing surgery, Gushin being an AHL All-Star, and then finally, Shang has a topic on David Quinn and some thoughts about his recent coaching struggles or coaching challenges is a good way to put that. But first, I'm wearing a jersey this week because the Sharks won a game. Sharks won a game. They ended their 12-game losing streak against Montreal this week, and I don't know when else I'm going to be able to wear a jersey if they go on another 12-game losing streak. So that's why I'm wearing a jersey this week. So congratulations, Sharks, for not continuing towards losing.
Well, it'll help that they're going to play Buffalo and then Chicago next, and then that they played Ottawa tonight because if that was Toronto they were playing, they wouldn't have been close to overtime.
No. Yeah. So this was an interesting week. I am happy also because the Sharks won a game, but also because they lost in dramatic fashion against Ottawa, which helps the tankathon. I'm not so happy about the Sharks losing 7-1 against Toronto. That was some of the worst hockey I've seen in a while. But let's start there. Let's start recapping a little bit about these games. What did you see this week from the Sharks?
Well, it was intense high and low. I was in Toronto. I was in Montreal. I was not in Ottawa. Toronto was as bleak a bleak point in the season that we've been going back even to the 10 spot games. Quinn called it arguably the worst game start to finish from the Sharks, which you can make that argument. The Vancouver, Pittsburgh 10 spot losses, there might have been even more hope. I remember the Pittsburgh, actually, that game, they actually played pretty well in the first period, even though they're down 2-0, funny enough. But anyway, it was a bleak scene in Toronto. So it was not pleasant to be around. It did inspire, I thought, one of my better sort of game stories this season, where I just thought about just how each of these sort of rock bottom losses was preceded by games that they should have won, or they played some really good hockey. The Pittsburgh-Vancouver games, of course, were preceded by a loss to the Capitals in Washington, Game 9 of the season, which up to that point was the Sharks' best game of the season. And the two Toronto games, right? They were preceded by a game or lost 9 of the streak was Detroit, where they actually thoroughly outplayed Detroit that game. That should have been a win. And loss number 10 was Winnipeg, and they got off to a slow start against the Jets. But then from the end of the last 5 minutes of the first period on, for 45 minutes basically, they competed. They played toe to toe against the best team at the time, the team with the best record in the league, in the Jets. And to lose those games, not to get a point out of those games, right? It's got to really kind of knock you for a loop. And you get that feeling that you can do the best that you can, and it's not going to be good enough. And that, I think, throws you down another kind of dark place too, where it's like, well, what's sort of the point of trying? And so that's what we kind of saw in the Toronto in the Toronto game, the Toronto game in Toronto. The Montreal game was a nice bounce back, and I wrote extensively about it. Finally got some good hockey from the Sharks, so I wrote 1,200 words about it with I think like 6 or 7 video clips and gifs. I just was so
Mm.
so happy to write about good hockey for once.
You had to love bomb the Sharks because you were you were like,
I just was happy. I was like,
finally.
I
Yeah.
saw this, and then the next day I go into Ottawa for practice. I'm like, hey, Justin Bailey, tell me about this. Hey, Kalen Addison, tell me about this, because I just was so pumped up.
Yeah.
To just write about good hockey for once, and then obviously in a season of negativity too.
Yeah.
I'm sure the guys are happy to talk about something good and not about being traded or the slump they were in or why they're not scoring and whatever, right? The usual topics
Hmm.
around the Sharks. So even though they followed up that game with Ottawa and not a great effort against Ottawa, read that story about their win against Montreal. I think there's a lot of clips, and I think it's one of those kind of things that when the Sharks are good again, those are the kind of stories that you'll see more about. 4 lines doing well,
Yeah.
each pairing doing something strong to contribute to a victory, things like that.
Mhm.
Total team effort, right? Which we haven't got a lot from the Sharks this year. Um,
Yeah, the iconic Ferraro and what's Blackwood, like tilting their
oh
head down
yeah,
at the
yeah, I
end of
forgot to
the
ask about that. Yeah,
such a
I
good
actually,
moment. Like
yeah,
on the
actually kicking
broadcast, it
myself.
was
Yeah.
like it was a very like poignant look at like just how exhausted they were at the end of that
Mhm.
game and just how much they had to hold on to get that one victory. And
Yeah.
it was a good look for Ferraro. It really was. It looked like he was like the heart and soul guy on that team, plus the goalie. But you
Yeah, and I
it was
mean
a good
he
look.
has been, right. Like that was a big
Hmm.
story after that game. Ferraro organizing a team dinner the day before, the night before the Montreal game,
Yeah.
and that was a big point of emphasis of his, even after the Toronto game. And he talked about just feeling good, just starting with feeling good with each other off the ice, feeling good with each other on the ice, and that how that can lead to good hockey.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk about it practically, the nuts and bolts of it, I mean, I think it could be as simple as like maybe you'll play a little bit harder if you care about the guy next to you, if you like the guy next to you a little more. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe maybe we're
No.
going to be just a little more willing to get down there and block a shot and
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I liked that game a lot. I was happy after it. I mean, they uh they needed it, I think.
oh
Even
yeah,
though it turns into a point where in losing seasons where you as a fan you're like God, they got to lose every single game because like they have to get the number 1 overall pick, but sometimes you really just need that one like good moment because this group is rough right now.
yeah, they are on pace for the worst points percentage in the cap era, which is pretty ugly.
Yeah. I don't know.
Worse
They
even than
need
the 2019-20 Red Wings. So
we've
that's
debated this before. Is are they that bad or maybe they
I'm going
are.
to
I
talk
don't
about
know.
that in a second. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually part of what I'm going to talk about with Quinn and
Yeah.
sort of uh just during times like these, obviously during the losing streak, Toronto, you read a lot of stuff
Hmm.
about, oh, it's Quinn's fault. You got to fire Quinn, um, and I'm gonna weigh balance kind of all those things. I actually I'm not going to just like say no or poo poo those things. I have a couple of sort of questions. I
Hmm.
guess like sort of questions I would ask all the fans first,
Sure.
and answer those questions, and then we can get into, well, is it a productive then to go with a new coach or not? So
Yeah. It was a good game, especially because the Toronto game, I was so upset at the end of that game. This Ottawa game, I don't know. There was some pluses and minuses. A lot of guys that needed goals got goals.
right,
They did lose in the last 5 seconds, which helps the tankathon. Pretty
yeah,
excited about that. They didn't get to
they
overtime.
get overtime, yeah.
Um, but yeah, they for like a period and a half there, they were getting kind of shelled by a not a great team, the worst
No,
team in the
no,
East.
no. Yeah,
So
there was a point in second period that they were being outshot 20-2, and their
mhm.
two shots in that second period were goals. Sure.
If it works, it works. But no, yeah, it just felt like it was gonna be untenable at that point in the second
Yeah.
period. Um, but happy for Ferraro, who also had a good game. I think these 2 games from him have been like his best games. I think this season, or at least some of the best hockey I've seen him play.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you
again, I think
mentioned
he's
that
been good
as
for a couple
well.
of months. Yeah,
Mhm.
and in the article about the winning hockey in Montreal, that
Mhm.
one game, that one shining moment in the
The
last
winning
month,
hockey.
Quinn said specifically that he also agrees that Ferraro's been a victim of the plus minus. That's a team stat,
Mhm.
and people pointed that Ferraro is not a good defenseman for this because he is the a number one defenseman on an awful team. Well, again, not his fault that he's the number one defenseman on an awful team.
Mhm.
So yeah, I actually think overall, by and large, this is some of the best hockey we've seen from him, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna need to looking for positivity. I'm going to have to clip it up over the next couple of
Yeah.
months because it's
Now,
all it's all in my notes. So I keep
yeah,
writing these things down there. So
because
for me to find.
at the end of last year, it looked really not great for
Hmm.
Ferraro. Like he just did not play good hockey most of last year. And this one he's stepping up and more of a leadership role. He's always been a leader in there, but it seems like they're looking for somebody, and he's kind of becoming that a little bit. He's on the power
Yeah.
play now and looking good too.
Well, yeah,
So,
I think the last couple months, obviously, the more competent puck moving, like now it's
mhm,
like advanced. At least last couple months, it's still more probably on the average. It's not like incredible, right? But
sure,
average, competent, right? And that combined with, I think defensively, they're still. There have always been sort of the struggles of him doing too much, and I think that's always going to happen for, especially for on a team like the Sharks.
sure.
But the same assets he had defensively that he's always had since the beginning. Just I talked about a lot before: his strength, his intensity, his four-way skating. Those are there every night with him, and so
Mhm.
um, I think the big part of it is that offense, but also to overall maturity, to maybe a little more patience, which has informed his offense and his defense.
We need a okay, we've been doing in the beginning of the shows where it's Sharks are bad question mark, Sharks are good question mark. We should have
Mhm.
a Ferraro is good question mark. The like segment of
Hey,
the
I,
podcast.
I, I, I'm on the Ferraro train. Remember my
You
was
have
it my
been.
breakout shark was
It's Mario.
Ferraro
And he's looked
getting to 20 points and a 3 assist night. It's gonna get him there. So
yeah, and the two you said breakout candidates. I don't know if it was Ferraro that you chose for that. Maybe you did.
no, that was my second half. I
That's
think
it.
it was my
That's
second
right.
half breakout. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and his
That
two
that
games in the second half have
I
been
think he has like
great.
four. Yeah, he has the yes, yeah. Like I think he was at 11 points. I was like, yeah, I think this offensive stuff is real enough, and like he's gonna get himself to like 2025 or something like that. So
There we go.
off to a
Or
good start.
he might be traded. Who knows?
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, so
I don't know. I honestly think it less and less likely that he is, just based on what the team is doing and how old he is right now. I don't think he will be, but
oh, I would argue though that because a lot of my argument
more
before was
value. But
that if the puck movement is for real, then suddenly we are talking about a well-rounded guy who maybe other people will see, not just me, but other people will see as a middle pairing defenseman.
mhm,
And at his age, if he a middle pairing defenseman at 25, that is, let's say he gets to a point where he can move the puck well enough that you can count on him for a good 25 points, 30 points, right? Obviously, he's not going to be a point per game guy, but
for sure.
that's a really valuable player, actually. And so
Yeah,
then
more
you can
value.
you can actually get a lot for him at his cap hit.
Mhm.
So I don't know if he keeps this up. Suddenly, maybe the offers will be real in there. And I could be wrong with what I said, because this was when the puck moving wasn't quite as obvious. I had seen some good stuff there, better stuff,
A
but
little
I
bit,
didn't know
yeah.
if it was like yeah. But I think it's taken off a little bit recently for sure, and so in that case, if there's a case to be made that Mara Ferraro is a 30-point defensive, like shutdown stalwart defenseman, penalty killing defenseman, that's pretty valuable, and that could get you a first, maybe easily, actually. So
Yeah, it has to be the right situation and a team that's going to shelter him in a good role. But
yeah,
you're right. He's not a terrible contract. 3 years, 2.6 or something like that.
no, I think
2.2.
it's 2 more years after this year
Yeah,
at 3.25. So
yeah.
Yeah, so it's terrible if he's a ball playing defenseman, which again, I've emphasized that I don't think he is, but I've been told that by a number of scouts, people I trust, and
Hmm.
so that's sort of the perception. But
True.
I think it is possible that over this last month, over the last 2 months, that he is changing that perception,
Hmm.
that league
I
wide sort
just
of perception.
I don't know. I think my girl holds on to him unless he gets blown away by an offer, but we'll see. That's coming up. We have like a month away, month and a half away from the
Hmm.
trade deadline, something like that. Oh, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
two
pumped.
2 months away, I guess. Less than 2 months away. It's March 8th, so but we're definitely
Uh,
getting there. So
this is a very good segue. We have a trade rumor, which we have every week, I think, for Alexander Chmelevski or
yeah,
Sasha
Sasha
Chmelevski.
Chmelevski. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, he, if you don't know, was a former sixth round pick of the Sharks, I think in 2017. Um, if you've been following the Sharks prospects for a while, he was kind of hyped up there with another CH prospect in Chekovich as like the new age of the Sharks, neither of which really played in the NHL for very long. Both of them ended up in Russia, which is where they're playing now in the KHL. And he's been doing well. He played for Shakir Mukhamadulin's old team, Salva Ufa.
Yeah, they were teammates
Um,
last year. Yeah.
yeah, for last year, a very good team, and he's been, by all accounts, like their one or two center, getting like 20 minutes a night, putting up 43 points in 49 games. I think it is
Yeah, I think
48
he's
games.
10th in the KHL with in scoring.
That's not bad
Yeah.
for a guy that bopped around the AHL for a while, had a few NHL games there, looked okay at times, got some compliments from Logan Couture about his smarts. I remember that. But then kind of when he was not told that he wasn't going to get a role, but was like, hey, you don't have a guaranteed spot on this roster, it seems like he wanted to jump ships to the KHL after that. So that we, myself included, kind of thought that might be it for the Alexander or the Sasha Chmelevski story. But a rumor came out today by Kevin Weeks that teams are interested in signing him after this good year that he's had in the KHL. Specifically, Vancouver was also mentioned as a possible landing spot. It was interesting they didn't say like the Sharks were interested. The rumor says like that
Yeah.
other teams were interested in his services, which is interesting to me because he's only 24, so that theoretically the Sharks could use him as
Hmm.
like a young guy if they felt like he could be an NHLer. So I'm curious about that. Is there any hope that he comes back to the Sharks, or is it more like he's going to another team? You
I'm
know?
trying to dig into that a little bit. I remember from Sasha. I did remember, yes, a smart player, but who just couldn't skate, who couldn't keep
Yeah.
up with the NHL. And I'm not sure. I haven't really watched him in the KHL, so I couldn't tell you if that's improved or not.
Hmm.
If that has improved significantly, then sure. He is an NHL smart player. I think he did show that in his time here. Or at least I believe he is. But if the skating hasn't improved that much, then again,
Might not be.
then maybe we're looking a little bit too much at sort of inflated KHL stats. We just went over like the top 5 KHL scorers now, right? Like Nikolai Godobin and Nikita Gusev's number 1,
Hmm.
Godobin's number 2, and names like
Jordan
that,
Wheel and
right?
Ryan
Jordan Wheels
Spooner.
5, Maxim Latunov. Everyone remembers Latunov is
Yeah.
ninth in the league in scoring. So I don't look at those points and get excited and say, oh, this guy should be in NHL. Just looking at that, right? You got to
Hmm.
look at those tools and what translates. And the brain does translate. I did like that. But the skating, I wonder severely about. And so I do wonder how much interest there really is
Hmm.
because can't skate center isn't useful on any team in this league.
That's
And
fair. Yeah.
so yeah, so I don't know, but I don't want to put that label on Sasha because I haven't really seen him in the last couple of years. So maybe it's improved to where it's
Hmm.
passable, right? And at the NHL level, not at that level. So if it's gotten that level, then yeah, then there could be some interest in him. And also too, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't know why the Sharks wouldn't be interested in that, except that maybe they don't see that. They don't see that
Hmm.
potential in his skating. So
Yeah, or there is a sour relationship there or something. I don't want to
Possibly.
speculate on that,
I
but
don't I
it's
don't know. I
possible.
don't know that for sure, but
Yeah,
I don't know if it's I think what you said was a little speculative in terms of why he went over there. I do remember there was a lot of forwards that he would
there's a
have
lot. Yeah,
to. Yeah, they were that was last off season, Quinn's first year as coach, and yeah, it was a lot of forwards who had to compete against a lot of sort of third, fourth line types that he would need to compete against. But I never heard that he was ruled out or that or
no, I think it
whatnot.
was not that he was ruled out, but I think it was just that he, after being so many years, was probably expecting a more consistent role.
But I don't know if that's the case with what happened that he
Sure,
expected that. That's what I wanted to
it is
sort of
speculative on my
yeah
point. Yeah,
like correct a little bit. Like we know that like a guy like Merkley last offseason thought that he kind
yeah,
of right because yeah like we've heard enough about that through the grapevine through sources whatever right. But
fair.
Chmelevski, I'm not so sure about that if he
Hmm.
thought that. If he did think that, I don't know if that was justified for him to think just like with Merkley. Just because you're drafted, you've been in an organization for a long time,
Hmm.
and you've been productive at the AHL. That
Yeah,
means that you're marked a spot with the Sharks. Chmelevski was not a better center last year than Sturm, than even Bonino. I don't think,
no, no,
and certainly not Couture and Hurdle. And so, so those are your top four centers there to start the season. So I'm
sure.
not, yeah.
He
So
can
I'm
play
not really
wing
sure.
too. He can play a
He can
little
play
bit of
wing
right
too,
wing.
yeah.
But
But so anyway, I have questions. I'm not ruling it out
hmm,
that he's improved his skating, but
yeah,
if you have watched his games, any of you guys,
yeah,
that's what I'll be looking at to see if that's improved. I don't care about the points he puts up at a inferior league, to be honest.
yeah.
Like
Well, I think it's still a good sign, right? That he has some like enough
oh,
offensive talent to
oh,
do it. But
of course,
yeah,
it's better to have 40
better
points than to
than
have
nothing.
20, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the tool that needs to translate. And
Yes,
if that doesn't look any better, then
100%.
yeah, then he has he yeah.
I watched Chmelevski at 2 points last year, and the
Hmm.
point one was October 2022, and he still had very very poor skating.
Hmm.
He was faster than I remember him, but not like his acceleration was still very poor. His top speed was better. His balance was poor. His stride was bad. He um, just did not look great. And then I watched him again when he was with like towards the end of the year with Shakir. When I watched some tape of his, when I watched Mugo Doolin's tape, still bad. I don't think it's improved enough that at that time. Maybe this year it has. I haven't really watched him
Maybe.
this
I
year.
mean, he's young enough that
Um,
I'm not ruling it out. And
mhm.
I do know that he has been. I don't want to discredit. I mean, he's been very, very good there. Like
Yeah.
I talked with the Russian scout over there because I just was curious about some of these things
Hmm.
that we've been hearing about Chmelevski here, and what he told me was glowing about Chmelevski that he's a game changer there.
Hmm.
And I can buy it. But again, though, that translation to NHL, being a game changer in the KHL does not
Sure.
automatically make you that, or even close. Doesn't even make you an NHL player.
Might not. It might
So
make you
yeah,
a
it's
former NHL
historically,
player.
yeah. I mean, we talk about guys like in the past, Gusev, right, that
Hmm.
had a lot of hype. Uh, Shipashev is the Vegas guy. I can't believe I forgot his name because
I think it's Sipashev.
yeah,
It's
Shipashev, right?
Vadim. I
Vadim
think it's Vadim.
Shipachyov. I can't believe I can't remember. Is
It's
that he
Vadim.
was the cutest story that my first year covering the Golden Knights.
Sh-
So,
Yeah, Vadim
I've
Shipashev.
actually forgotten how to say his name, Shipachyov, right?
Yeah, that was a
Um,
nightmare.
yeah, and so uh, the
Yeah.
KHL NHL sort of relationship has been littered with stories like this.
Yeah, and I think
So we'll
people
see.
like we glue onto certain stories like Alexander Radulov who went over and came back, but he was also like a super high pick and
Yeah, Radulov
like
was at like a lottery pick, and he
yeah,
only went over for
yeah.
not because he wasn't
Oh,
good
he was
enough,
over
but
for a
because
while. Yeah.
oh no, but he only went over because like I
Mhm.
don't. It's something to do with Nashville. It had nothing to do with like he
Yeah,
wasn't good enough though, right?
exactly.
So
But then
Radulov is an
people
awful example of that because that's not close to the
exactly.
same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, people equate that. They're like, well, Radulov scored at whatever this rate. So then, but it's like Radulov's like an actual NHL top
Again, you
six
gotta look
forward.
at
It's a
the
different
different
thing.
tools, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
different tools that translate, and so
And
yeah,
also the
so
KHL is a lot different 8 years ago than it is now in terms of
mm,
its depth currently in terms of its actual superstar talent right now. So you got to think about that too.
Yeah. But anyway, like Radulov again, yeah, like he was an NHL talent from sort of the beginning. I
from day
mean,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
day one kind of, and so he went over there, he put up points, and he came back. He put up points. That wasn't a
Hmm.
surprise because he was big, and he was very skilled and all that kind of stuff. That stuff that translates, right? So
Hmm.
anyway, so.
Anyway, but the point is, there's interest, which
Mhm.
is kind of spawned the question, and we tried to do a little bit of digging of how much.
Do you see my face? I don't know if there's some fishing there. I'm not really sure.
Hmm. But how
Yeah.
much is this worth? And I think people are going to be like, "Whoa, there's a rumor that Chmelevski is going to get traded, so we're going to get a lot back." And I don't think so. I think
No.
this is going to be like a late round pick kind of thing.
If you do
Like,
get it, yeah, but then also too, the team that's acquiring him, like, what's his role going to be,
hmm,
right? What are you earmarking for him, right? And
hmm,
and so yeah, so it's hard to say what. 'Cause I don't think its game has grown enough that he's going to be in your top six. I don't think anyone's
no, I
expecting
don't think
that,
so.
right?
No,
And
he's not
so
also not fast enough, even if there was improvement to be at the play at the NHL pace like that.
yeah,
Even
like
if there's been improvement.
and then his game, where how is it suited for your bottom six? I mean, it could be he's a smart player,
He's
but
smart. I think he's responsible enough. I do think there's a playmaking center role for him. I just don't. I have to watch and see how much his speed
yeah,
improves.
yeah, yeah. No, I had to admit that. Like I said, that I haven't really seen him the last couple of years, but I definitely was not blown away by what I saw with the Sharks. I guess I'll put it that way. So there were
Yeah.
things I liked, but um,
I think on a bad team, he might be able to stick on a third line. But Vancouver's not a
The
bad team,
Sharks,
so he
the
does go to
Sharks, the Sharks have
Vancouver.
been a bad team for years,
Hmm.
and he wasn't doing that, right? So like
He looked
I don't know.
okay though, especially in his last like little bit there. I don't think he looked awful. I think he had something like 8 points in 19 games. He stuck around, and this was also in his 3 years ago, whenever it was. So if he's improved from that point, I think it's possible.
Actually, I'm not ruling it out. I just
Hmm.
you
Don't
know,
get too
I
hyped.
I didn't think it was some great loss to the prospect pool when he decided to
Mm.
go to Russia. I guess is all
Mhm.
is all I'm saying. But yeah,
Try
I
to
mean,
recoup
good
the sixth round pick that they spent on him. I think that's our goal.
adult.
That's what they should aim for. Is to you spend a six on him, get a six back. You'll always have those 10 points or whatever he put up for the Sharks.
Yeah, but I guess if that's all he gets back, a fifth, a sixth, or whatever, right? Then that tells you what the league thinks of him. It's not like
Sure.
he's kind of like we talked about Jack Stanika. Okay, that's sort of like okay, there's a smidgen of upside there. I'm gonna throw you a fifth or a sixth for him, right?
Hmm.
And if he's worth more than that, then you wonder, well, why do the Sharks just don't keep him?
Yeah.
And yeah, and that could be a relationship thing like that. That's something that I'm checking on to see if I get anything back on that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's an interesting rumor. It came out of nowhere, to be honest, because
it
like
is a little,
I
yeah,
just
out of
don't
nowhere. Yeah.
I don't associate like Kevin Weeks generally, and he's very good, and he has good sources and all that stuff. But he normally the trades sometimes are like big rumors and stuff like that, or contract stuff or whatever. And just Sasha Chmelevski, like I don't know, anybody even really cares. Like it's like fine, I guess. Um, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'll have to see. I want to try and find a game of his to watch and get like a
Yeah,
little bit better
let us know.
of his sense.
I'm not going to go so far to watch any of his KHL games, but
Mhm.
I am curious if he does come back, how he looks, and I'm open to being wrong. And he's a really nice kid.
Yeah.
I like talking with him. And
But he was legitimately good when I saw him with Mukamadulin. I will say that. Like he looked
mhm,
good. He still looks slow in
sure,
but he did look good. He was definitely like your source said a game changer for that team.
hmm I can believe
And
it. Yeah,
so
I think Mukumbulin's a great example though of like what you look for when you're watching games like that. You look for tools. You look for
mhm,
size, skating, things that I can see
yeah,
that in NHL. Right?
yeah,
And so it's not about production because obviously Chmelevski outproduces a Mukmadulin by two,
mhm,
3 times, right? But it's those things that make Mukmadulin. That's why Mukmadulin is the top prospect, and Chmelevski is trying to scratch his way back to the NHL.
yeah.
And so those, yeah, so that's what you look for. Yeah, the points. I mean, honestly, Chmelevski could score half the points, but be a more legitimate NHL like possibility if his skating has improved 2 times. right? Just for example, right? And so
Sure.
he's like turned himself into a model 3C at the KHL or something like that, right? And
Yeah.
then the footwork has improved. That
Maybe.
has a better chance to play in the NHL than a guy whose skating has improved that much and is putting up points.
Yeah, he and I do want to emphasize that he isn't like the floaters like Blichfeld and
Mm-hmm.
um Chekovich, where you can kind of tell just the way that they play that they're never going to contribute in a meaningful sense, and because of the way that they generate offense is very floaty, I would say, and they're not good forecheckers, they're not good defensively, so you kind of know that KHL might be best for them, or yeah, you know, Finland, Sweden, whatever. But yeah, the Chmelevski's not that. I mean, he does play a more North American style of hockey, I think, in general. So
Well, yeah, I mean he is North American. So.
yeah, so he's North American. He's from here, so it makes sense.
He's American. It's not
He's
even North American.
American.
He's American.
No, I know. I'm just trying to say, like, people will equate the two and be like, well,
No.
yeah,
I don't even mean to suggest that. Like
yeah,
Chmelevski, I remember being a bright, smart player.
he is.
That's sort of his earmark, and he was conscientious
Mhm.
defensively.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just again getting from point A to point B and
Mhm.
getting past people, stuff like that. That was more of the issue. So.
Yeah, and because like you could kind of tell when you watch Blichfeld, you're like, it's really funny how you play hockey. It just is not the way that it's ever going to make it. But it, good for him for sticking around as long as he did, and I think he got into an NHL game or two.
Yeah, he did.
Oh
He did.
yeah,
He actually got suspended for
he injured Nathan
taking
McKinnon.
Blackwell. Yeah, sorry. McKinnon's head. I think he was
Oh my god,
I think Blackwell was an AHL All Star too. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
might have been.
I
He
don't know.
scored so many points.
Yeah, yeah, he was good at the AHL level. Yeah, it's not.
Wow, look at these segues today. We have AHL news right after you mentioned the AHL All Star game. Oh my gosh. Good segues today.
Yeah,
Anyway, I think we can wrap up with Chmelevski. We might get a
yeah.
late round pick. We'll have to see where it goes.
We'll see. Prove me wrong. I'll be happy to see it. So yeah, he seems like a
Yeah.
good kid. So yeah.
In other AHL news that we have for this week, Ozzy Wiesblatt had meniscus surgery. It'll be out for about a month, as reported by Sheng. Any updates on that exactly?
No, just another a tough blow for Ozzy. Obviously, had that season-ending shoulder injury a couple of years ago, and and it's just been a rough kind of go at pro hockey since he transitioned over. And
Mm-hmm.
this year hasn't really taken a huge step forward. He was starting to show some signs at the end of last year, but um, yeah, I think I think that he's got a couple of years left in his ELC this year and next year, but obviously time is running out for him to make a big impression on the Sharks.
Now, Ozzy's kind of an interesting guy because you're right. It's not like he hasn't really had the progression offensively, even from right after he was drafted. I think he had a decent draft plus 1 year, then his draft plus 2 year was very poor offensively. It hasn't translated offensively, so you have to basically mold your game into what are you going to be after that if you're not
Hmm.
going to be the scorer. And maybe because Ozzy's so pesty and he hits pretty good, that he was going to turn into that. Um, but it I don't think that's been. He's not like taking over games in the AHL, even with like the pestiness.
Yeah, I
So
mean the part of the problem is that he is smaller, which
mhm,
matters if you're going to play that grinding kind of. He's going to be sort of a fourth line pass. That can be useful in its way, fourth line
sure.
disturber, but you would like to see more AHL production because then you when you translate to AHL, that AHL production is going to drop. But it kind of shows that the AHL production shows that he's got some sort of skill, like pro level skill and that sort of thing, right? Like a decent
Hmm.
amount, and we don't quite see that with Ozzy yet. And
Yeah.
so a guy who scores who averages 0.25, not even point 0.2 points a game at the AHL level what's he going to average at NHL?
Nothing
Nothing,
essentially.
right? Yeah, pretty much, right? And so that's not too useful. And then the smaller side matters because he throws his body. I'll give him credit for that. He's a big hitter. He's annoying as hell to play against. If you remember our interview with Jason Demers, he talked about
Annoying.
how annoying Ozzy was to play against, and that's great and all that stuff. But then if your body wears down, that's a question that if his body can hold up against stronger, bigger, faster players in the NHL. And so we are, I think, getting a point where we're obviously we can rule out like a big offensive future for him. Likely, I mean, maybe he turns it around. You never know. He's still young, but likely we're not going to see him in a middle six NHL role ever. But is a fourth line possible? Like you mentioned, guys can go just with that. I think Adam Raska just made his Minnesota Wild debut. Not
played 3
that,
games.
not that he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be an NHL regular, but nonetheless, though, you can carve out a future that way. But like I mentioned, the other things here, though, that you'll still like to see a little more AHL production there, just more of a greater demonstration that he has the puck skills to play the NHL. Because we saw the same with Rasko, actually, right? Great attitude, annoying to play against.
Better hitter, actually.
Maybe better, will hit you everywhere, right? But he didn't have a lot of puck skills at the AHL level, and we saw it all the way back in the AHL at a lower level league that he didn't have a lot of puck skills. I think Ozzy does have more puck skills than Raska, but I don't know if he has a lot more though. And so
even
we'll
that
see.
way in juniors too, because I did a prospect video on Ozzy after his in second year after being drafted, and he just doesn't have a lot of he holds onto the puck for way too long, and when he's able to. In the AHL, he can't even really hold onto the puck, but in the junior leagues, he would just hold onto the puck and kind of never connect plays in his brain, and he would just kind of go around the ice with the puck and wait to lose it, essentially, or give it up to no one.
I mean,
never connected plays well.
Skates well, can attack the middle, right? That's sort of a trademark is to carry the puck, right, and attack the middle, and he can do that. I saw that the game that I was at a couple weeks ago, but
he can. His
but there's
transition
nothing.
play is pretty good, but then nothing happens.
Yeah, nothing happens from there, right? Yeah. So
that was definitely a hallmark of that draft for Doug Wilson Jr. was transition guys that can carry the puck. Some of them have worked out, some of them haven't worked out.
Yeah. I don't know if any of them have worked out, but we'll see though. There's
except for our AHL All-Star Daniil Gushchin.
There's a good transition.
There's a good transition as well.
Yeah. And the AHL All-Star from last year, Thomas Bordeleau, right? So the jury's still out on both those guys. But
this is true. And it
hasn't
is
been closed.
Because the 2020 draft for a long time has been like the sticking point for people about the Doug Wilson Jr. era. The thing like, okay, this is the draft that like is going to load us up. It was all forwards that draft. We got Raska and Co. and we've got Adam Young or Alex Young, and we've got Ozzy, and
there were a lot of picks that draft too, right? Because I think the previous years he didn't have a lot of picks because they had traded all the year before. His first pick was 48 in the second round, Artemi Kenyazev. They only had 5 picks in the 2019 draft. They only had 6 picks. Oh no, it's 5 also in the 2018 draft, the Ryan Merkley draft. But then they had 9 in the 2020 draft, the COVID draft. So sort of a reload to the system. And like I said, the book's not closed on Gushchin and Bordeleau, and they both have. I think they both have NHL caliber talent. But obviously, there's a lot of holes in their game, so we're not sure about their futures. But yeah. So anyway, no, but it's interesting though. Yeah, that draft is sort of. I don't know.
Linchpin. It was like Harold was like, "Oh, you got to wait out for the 2020."
This is the one that can change the Sharks' fortunes or the Sharks' future, and it hasn't quite done that yet.
Not yet. But I am super excited for Daniil Gushchin, obviously, because I love the Daniil Gushchin, and I'm going to hype him up whenever I can. That he, congratulations to him. He has been the Barracuda's best forward, and that's something that yes, it may or may not translate to the NHL ever, but it's something that I don't think people thought would be the case for Daniil Gushchin, like with Bordelot coming in, and even guys like Ko, who had great OHL seasons
Yeah,
in
and
the
it's
same
big and
draft. And
fast.
he's
Yeah,
big
so
and fast, and people are like,
right,
"Oh, that
right,
guy's
right.
going to be the leader for the." And it's like, no, I think it's still Daniil Gushchin who might be the most at this point. And Bordelot's been injured, so kind of tough to say. He's had some NHL time too, so but I'm just very happy for Daniil. He's looked good most of the times that I've watched him. Some games looks better than others. Some games he really does look like he takes over at this level, which is what you want to see.
Yeah.
And then some games he's a little bit off, but
He absolutely
um,
deserves to be the
mhm,
all-star of the team. When kind of they need a goal, that's the guy, or
that's the guy.
they need some offense. That's the guy that they turn to.
Hmm. It's funny because I look at whenever I watch Barracuda games, I still think Cardwell might be the most has a chance to be in an NHL lineup kind of guy, and it's interesting to me just because
I think
he's.
he's had a nice
Hmm.
pro debut here. So yeah, I think he's a guy that can work out
Yeah,
from that draft or the 2021 draft. That's a year later,
yeah.
but that
He's
can work
technically a
out.
2020 guy because they're all
Oh
he's the
sure,
overager.
sure,
Yeah,
sure,
so
sure,
they're all kind of the same age, but yeah, people would not have pegged that after like Ozzy and Bordelot and all that stuff. But
sure, sure.
interesting how prospects work out. But and it's in San Jose, so this is going to be an amazing time for Daniil Gushchin, who scored tonight, I think, as well. Yeah, he did.
Are you gonna come in your 75 jersey to the All-Star game?
Need to. No, I might get a Daniil Gushchin jersey or some sort of Barracuda jersey. I think.
My writer
Um,
Nikita, he's working on a Gushin story, so I'm excited for that
love
to
it.
come. If you guys enjoyed his Mukuma Doolin and his Romanov stories, yeah, I think
Mhm.
there's some good stuff coming from him.
Yeah, but we've talked about Gushchin enough, and I'm sure we will talk about him after the All Star game too, see how he does and all that. But, all right, this is our last topic before we get into the Chris Peters interview, which is again amazing. Everybody should watch it. But you wanted to talk a little bit about Quinn. What do you have to say about Quinn?
I just have been thinking about this a lot, and obviously on the Sharks' 12-game losing streak, a lot of fans, a lot of people talking, "Oh, how does this guy keep his job? How?" Um, all
That
that
was
kind of
me
stuff,
included.
right? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean that's that, and that's understandable. Two double-digit losing streaks, that
some of the
doesn't
worst
happen.
hockey I've seen the Sharks play ever
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah, that's true too. Some of these games have indeed been the worst Sharks hockey that I have seen. Even
Hmm.
the Sharks haven't made the playoffs in 4 years now, going to be 5 years, and that this year has been the worst hockey that I've seen for sure. Can't question that. And then I mentioned earlier, they're on a pace to be the worst, um, the worst. The worst team in the cap era in terms of points percentage, and this is an era where it's easier to get points because there's no ties, right? So
Hmm.
and there's also overtime losses that you didn't get points for losing overtime 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, though, what I thought about though is first that if you talk about keeping or firing Quinn, I think one of the things that I think I mentioned that there's two questions that I'm going to ponder, and that if that I would suggest that you might think about is first, how good did you think these Sharks were going to be this year's team? That's number one question, and number two, is he the right coach for the rebuild?
Mm.
And the reason why these two questions come to mind is first, how good were these Sharks? If you thought this Sharks team was going to be a playoff team, not that anyone did, I'm just saying if you thought this team was really going to be a playoff team, then of course you would want to fire Quinn because they're gonna be lucky to get 50 points this year. And playoff team is a 90-point team, so he's gonna be 40 points behind that pace, right?
Yep.
If you think that this team is a 70-point team, then there's an argument there too, because this team is obviously going to struggle for that, to that, right?
Hmm.
And before I get to my thoughts about how good I thought this team was going to be or whatnot, right? Then important in terms of the whether or not he's the right coach. So you got to think about when Greer hired him. I think Greer knew what he was about to do, even though I don't think he was quite. He didn't quite say it in his press conferences when he first got hired, but I think he knew that he was taking the Sharks into a rebuild,
Mm.
and he did that with trading Brent Burns immediately right there, right? Shortly after he got announced, and all the moves since then, the moves that are sort of the clear lines between you're trying to win or you're trying to rebuild. He's taking the rebuild path every time.
Pretty much.
Carlson, Meyer, all that stuff, right? And the main reason why guys like Vlasic and Hurdle and Couture are still here is just their contracts, and so that's not. I don't know. I think yes, the Montreal commentator a couple days ago said something like, "Oh, the Sharks are still tearing down; they're not rebuilding yet." I mean, that's a technicality in terms. They are still trying to kind of tear down pieces or take pieces away, but they're definitely in a rebuild. They're
Yeah.
just sort of rebuilding around the pieces that they kind of had to keep
Hmm.
because yeah, like pieces like Couture and Hurdle and all that kind of stuff for contract reasons, retainment reasons, and also too, I think they also want to have good players for guys like Eklund and Will Smith when he comes here, guys that they can play with a little bit too. So,
Hmm.
but anyway, though, so when Greer hired Quinn, it was a long-term hire. Is my point.
Yeah.
Right. That Greer thought that he was hiring the coach that was going to be the right coach for the rebuild. I don't know if necessarily Quinn is going to be the right coach once they're out of it, but for these couple of years and for when you think about a rebuild, it's not really Quinn's job to win games really so much. I mean it is, but it kind of isn't.
Hmm.
His job is more to make sure that he develops guys.
Hmm.
Guys like Eklund, guys like all the down the line,
Braun.
Bordelot,
Yeah.
right? Some guys will haven't been as successful as Eklund too. I'm not going to just name sort of his successes, right? But guys like Bordelot, just guys around Gushin, guys like that, right?
Thrun as well. Thrun might be a
Thrun,
good
yeah,
one.
Thrun is a good one too, right? Guys like that, right? So that's even Ferraro. Ferraro's in the age range of still
Hmm.
young, right? 25, right? And so I think that those were the that's more the barometer if you look at it like Greer I think was looking at it. And so to fire Quinn after a long losing streak is reactionary because what are you going to do? You're not
There's
you're not
no
trying to win a Stanley Cup with
expectation.
this
Yeah.
team. Yeah. Um so I think those are the two main questions. And so to go back to the first question about how good I thought these Sharks were, I know that in our bold predictions preseason that I said 70 points plus, but I don't I know it sounds like I'm backtracking, but and I said it like shortly thereafter, like it was sort of just like I said it on a lark. I don't know if I really thought it was a 70-point
Yeah.
team.
You thought
Because
maybe there
last year's
was a
Sharks was a 66-point
chance.
team. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I thought maybe there was a chance if everything fell into place, maybe.
and that
Yeah.
was last year was the team, well, maybe 62 or 66, whatever last year's team was. That was with Eric Carlson winning the Norris Trophy and having Timo Meyer for 2/3 of the season. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but I guess what I am kind of coming to or whatever a grapple. I don't know what the right. I don't want to over dramatize it because it's just
Mm.
hockey, but like I might have been wrong. Like they actually might be worse than I thought they were, I guess. Like I don't know if I really
Sure.
thought they were a 70-point team, but I don't know if I thought that they were gonna be I didn't think they would be this bad.
Hmm.
And
A
the
46-point team or whatever they technically are on pace for, 42
I didn't
points or
think they would be
something.
this bad. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that they would be maybe clear 60 at least or around
Hmm.
that range, right? I thought that, and actually some of the things I thought would happen happened, but not enough of it though. Like I thought that they would get better goaltending than last year because last season really was really bad, and if they got this year's goaltending last year, they actually probably would be like a 70, 80-point team, a low 80
Hmm.
point team. I don't know if they would make the playoffs, but because yeah, I thought Reimer and Kakinen were really bad last year. But anyway, I thought the goaltending would be better. I thought Hurdle
Hmm.
would bounce back. I thought Granlund would be good. I thought, yeah. So those are the things that happened. But a lot of things that I thought would happen didn't happen. Duclair, Barabanov, and Couture, just by virtue of not being here, being hurt. So none of them have really contributed at quite the level that I expected in my projections. And so that's half of your top 6 right there, right? So that's part of it. I knew the defense on paper was going to be the one of the worst defenses put to paper in modern NHL history, in cap
It's really
NHL
bad.
history. But it has been worse than even I thought. I thought they would be able to stitch it together. I think they have been hurt. I know that this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I like Matt Benning, and Matt Benning is an everyday defenseman on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they do miss a guy like him that actually can kill some plays and make some of the difference. Not a huge impact guy, but it's kind of like we take Henry thrown out of his defense. Actually, Matt's better than Henry at this point, I think. Anyway, so that's my opinion at least. So a meaningful defenseman. That's gonna hurt you.
Their
And
current point leader in defense is
what, Ferraro?
Kalen Addison with 12. No, it'll be Ferraro tonight now with 14.
Okay. What is Addison at? Addison doesn't have that many points. Unless
12.
you count Minnesota. Oh, that's a lot to Minnesota though, right? So yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. A lot of those points.
Oh, he has 7. Yeah, you're right. I was.
Yeah. That's not. Yeah.
So he has 7.
7 with the Sharks.
Yeah, he has 7 with the Sharks, 5 with Minnesota, and then so like the leader would be Ferraro with 14 right now overall.
Right.
And I think you're right. They're missing Matt Benning for. I think they could dump a lot of responsibilities on Matt Benning that they can't on anybody else.
At least defensively, the only guys that he can dump defensive responsibilities on
even
are Ferraro. Too. Really, just Ferraro and Benning. You can like count on them to kill a play, maybe.
And even like some of the puck moving responsibilities they can put on Benning, but they can't now. So it's rough. Anyway, back to the point.
I mean, it's even, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat. Even with Benning, it'd still probably be the worst defense in a cap era. But it'd be still a little better though. It'd be definitely better still with Matt on it. So the defense, I just thought that they were going to be able to stitch it together. It's just something passable, and it obviously hasn't happened. I've relayed this story a couple times. I just think it's funny. I think Mike Reard kind of knew it, because one of the questions I looked at this roster and I was like, well, who's going to be your power play quarterback? Like I could see this back in July, right? And I asked Mike directly in a press conference, and Mike was like, we'll see.
We'll find out. Maybe it's Leon Gavanka, and then it wasn't Leon Gavanka,
and it wasn't anybody. It was Kyle Burrows, right? And so, anyway, so I think what I'm coming to is that I do think I was wrong. That I did think these Sharks would be better, and I don't think that they are, because, like I said, the defense is as bad as I thought it would be. But half of the forwards that I thought would be contributors are not. The regular contributors are not. And so that's like I said, that's a big chunk of your offense, because right now, like, okay, you have Zerlin, who's surprised, which is great. I think Eklund has been about as good as I thought he would be. Hurdle and Granlund have delivered. But if you had Couture, Barabanov, and Duclair producing, then all of a sudden the team looks way different, right? That's again, that doesn't make you a great team, but does that make you a 50, 60 point team? Maybe it does. I think it does. Yeah, it could, but anyway, they're not around though. And so I think that definitely has hurt them.
Yep.
So I think if I think of it that way, that this Sharks team is really one of the worst teams in the cap. Like, they really are. And not that they're playing like it, but they actually are, right? And then I add that to, well, is Quinn the right coach for the rebuild? And I actually tend to think that he is. I know a lot of people talk about the young players, and I've gone through it so many times, right? So I don't want to rehash too much, right? But once again, Lafreniere, Kakko, they just weren't very good players at 18 years old. And so I don't think he did anything to their development that I can tell. And I can name players, Buchnevich, Fox, who's Fox's partner? I always forget his name. Lindgren, right? Guys that flourished under Quinn, developed under young players who developed and flourished under Quinn, and not just a surefire starter like Fox, but again, Buchnevich, Lindgren, guys like that, right? And right now we're seeing we're seeing Eklund, we're seeing Zetterlund, we're seeing Thrun, and some people might blame him for this or that guy not succeeding, some young player, but I don't see anybody that he's quote unquote ruined, who's a young player on the Sharks. I do think that yeah, there seemed to be some disconnect with him and Gregor maybe, and him and LeBanc. But LeBanc's a veteran player, and so I don't really classify that same. And then Gregor is a guy who can be maybe a good role player, but this is I think that the sort of the future linchpins of the Sharks, right? Let's call him that, right? Which I don't know if Gregor would have been at his best, but guys like Eklund and Thrun, and I think he's doing a good job. And Zetterlund, surprised now, Zetterlund has put himself in that conversation, which he wasn't last year. So anyway, I think those are the two things I think about that. How good is the Sharks team actually? And if you think the Sharks team is really bad, then what's Quinn doing wrong then? And if you think that he's a good coach for the rebuild, which I think was Greer's thinking, that this is a long-term play. It's not about 11 game losing streak or 12. That'll be, again, that's you fire guys that are trying to win Stanley. You fire Mike Sullivan if the Penguins start off losing the first 12 games because they're trying to win the Stanley Cup, of course.
True.
But it's a different expectation. And so I don't know if that makes sense to you. I don't know what you think about all that, but I think that's sort of how I thought about it during this losing streak. Is it really
I think in my opinion, there's a difference in my mind of the two losing streaks and how they responded to them and how they were playing in the two. I think there were, and both losing streaks, there were games that they could have won or maybe should have won in quotes or whatever. But the end of the first one was so shocking and so jarring that I
would actually argue the first one, there wasn't a game that I would say they clearly should have won, that they outplayed the opponent.
Exactly. You're right. That it was so bad. It was so bad. It was, again, the worst hockey that I've ever seen the Sharks play. And it felt like they had given up on Quinn. And that was the part that I didn't like about Quinn being there, is that the players, they looked like they gave up. They weren't responding in any kind of way to anything he was doing. And he was shuffling lines every game and he was trying to do things, but they had given up. And that's when I was like, okay, he can't be the coach anymore. If you cannot get anything out of Eklund, you cannot get anything out of Zetterlund or whatever. Or they were still getting some things, but I didn't want that to continue the entire year where it's you've now wasted a whole year of development because of them. Whereas in this one, I think he's doing more in terms of, it seems like they haven't given up entirely.
Yeah.
There's bad games. Yeah. There's really bad games. But they haven't given up on Quinn specifically. They're just, they're not.
They just suck.
They just are not very good. And there's definitely been some progression in players like Eklund, and even Thrun is looking okay. And there was times when he wasn't looking okay. That now that there's been highs and lows in these guys, that I do have a little bit more faith in Quinn being able.
But Quinn has stuck with them too, right?
Yeah, Quinn has helped to not just. And even Eklund being benched occasionally, he hasn't done the thing where he benches them multiple games or puts them on the fourth line.
Yeah, there have been half period benchings.
They've been one period or half period.
I don't even know if they've been a whole period. I'm not sure. Maybe a whole period, but definitely not even more than a period, though. Yeah.
As a Sharks fan, I'm very used to players getting benched for games, multiple games, or LeBanc getting sent to the fourth line and never coming back.
But it's different. Different things. So they were worse prospects, like in Ryan Merkley's case, or they were at different times in Sharks history when they were really trying to win games, like LeBanc under Peter DeBoer, right? So
or even Bugner a little bit. But yeah, so I think I worry sometimes about it. But Quinn hasn't broken that trust really with me yet. So maybe I should have a little more faith in him. He's put people back in positions to succeed at when they earn it. It looks like when they come back to play hard.
I mean, I would say that I think that if you look at this current Sharks team, the three young players I mentioned, I think are expected to be part of the Sharks for a little while, right? Eklund, now Zetterlund, and Thrun. Yep. And those guys are all better players than they were, I think, last year or from day one this year, I think. trying to think about anybody else. Hotiuk, I think, is kind of in between. I use Zadina. Zadina is my classic. Like, if he gets Zadina in the right track,
It's a good
then
coach.
that's a good coach. And Zadina's kind of in the middle. There's good games, there's bad games, and so we'll see by the end of the season what we get out of him. But I think that's a good barometer. Good barometer guy of the current group of younger players on the Sharks. Ferraro, actually, too. Again, I think Ferraro does count, and Ferraro, I think, is playing his best hockey ever right now. And I'm trying to think about anybody else. Of course, we're going to talk about guys that didn't really stick, like Bordalo and Gushin, but I honestly think they didn't stick for a reason. I don't. That's
I
more
don't even
along
know if there was ever really a plan for
Kako.
Gushin to stick around anyway, because it was
Well,
more
I
just
don't
like
think he was good enough, though. Honestly, too, though. Like,
no.
if Gushin was good enough to be here, like without a doubt, he'd be here.
He had 2 games though. That would be my opinion. He needs a little bit more of a runaway.
He had games last year. I don't know. I think again that they
2
thought
games last year.
Yeah, I know, but I think if they thought that he was there, they'd give him more run.
I think they will after the trade
Yeah,
deadline. Maybe
at that point that he'll have enough
it's the
experience and
classic March
whatnot,
hockey,
right? But again, though, if he was Eklund good now, he'd be here, though. I do think that. So, I don't think he is.
I don't think he's I don't think so either. I'm just trying to defend Gushtin because I don't think he had a long enough trial of play, because he's been good. Like, he's legitimately taken a better step than last year.
I mean, you're talking about the AHL or the NHL? The NHL.
In AHL.
Oh, AHL. Okay, yeah, he's been better at AHL. He's been better at AHL.
So,
But
point is,
yeah, but going back to just like young players, I think he's done a pretty good job with them. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think if there's any huge like misses. I mean, like, are you going to blame David Quinn because Ryan Merkley didn't work out?
no.
Right. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm going to look over it just to make sure I'm not looking at this with the rose-colored lenses. But the people that have been through here, I think he's done a good job with. I think, like I said, only youngish player that you might question is Gregor a little bit, but Gregor's ceiling isn't necessarily. I don't know if Gregor's ceiling is that high to begin with, anyway. So.
Gregor going off in one game last year cost us Connor Bedard anyway.
So. Right. Maybe Quinn was mad about that. So.
And Gregor is now a productive-ish fourth liner for Toronto. So
it's okay. Yeah, he's okay. But Toronto's a good team. So that's credit to Gregor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking it over. Yeah, some of the Barracuda players or younger players that have passed over through here. And again, I don't see a coach that's ruining young players. So
no, and I think again the difference between the 2 losing streaks is just one felt like very doomsday. Like,
sure,
that was horrible, and then one, it's bad, but not as like they were playing better hockey most of the time during that time, and they had a few games there where they might have been able to win it, but yeah, that first one, it was the worst goal differential ever in NHL history or whatever it was.
Sure, it was on pace to be. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Awful. So I think that's the bigger thing, is you want to make sure that the players are still playing for the coach, even if you value some of his coaching things, that they still have to be responding to him. And if they stop, then you have to fire him. There's no other thing.
Yeah,
you're putting out nothing on the ice.
One of our listeners, Alex, asked me a pretty good question in the comments like a month ago. Like, why can Tortorella do what he's doing in Philadelphia, and Quinn can't do that with the Sharks? And just the record, right? Because I think Philadelphia might be in the playoffs right now. I know they're kind of in a hunt, right? But if you look at the teams are just different. Yeah, the teams are just different. Philadelphia had more to start with. They're 20-something level of players. They have a deeper group of good youngest 20-something players than the Sharks do. And along with some of the established veteran guys are pretty good, like Couturier and whatnot, still around, right? And so the Flyers are just a better team to begin
And they
with.
actually have NHL caliber defenders most of the time.
Right. Sanheim and yeah, Walker's been pretty
York,
good for them, right?
not
Now
York.
they have Drysdale now, right? So yeah, those are three guys that might be ahead of Ferraro on the Sharks, right? So arguably,
Sanheim is the one I was thinking of. And yeah,
yeah.
they just have actual players who can play D, and then they have Carter Hart, who's for all of his faults and everything, can be a starting goaltender.
You have an unquestionable kind of like number one goalie, I guess. If you, I
Mm-hmm.
guess like how much you like him, but like he is a number one guy. Whereas like
Yeah.
Blackwood came in the season with questions, Kakinen came in the season with questions, right? So I saw in a way I think there's no comparison just because Tortorella had a lot more to work with. So yeah, they're in a rebuild, but they're doing it with a lot more pieces at the NHL level than the Sharks have right now, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So yeah, but anyway, I thought that was an interesting comparison, though. It was an interesting question that was asked.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I don't know. I think I'm still kind of wait and see, like whether or not should David Quinn be the coach, next year. Still wait and see how the team responds the rest of the year, right? Because they just had
Mm-hmm.
that awful loss in Toronto, and they responded in a good way against Montreal. But now, this Ottawa game, obviously not a great sort of continuation of what they're doing in Montreal. But there's 39 more games, and it's going to be a tough kind of nothing to play for, kind of, right? In a lot of ways, it's no playoffs, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Guys are playing to get on other teams in some
Basically.
cases,
Yeah.
and so and you got to get these guys to all play together for the rest of the season here. And so we'll see how he does with it. There are going to be more bad losses for sure. Just some nights where guys don't have it. The best teams, they don't have nights like the Sharks have when they give it 10 goals, but all the good teams have off nights though.
Yeah.
Right. And so the Sharks off nights are worse because way uglier because they're not a good team because yeah, they're not a deep team. But so the Sharks, off nights would be a lot worse. So there's going to be a few more of these 7-1 losses, those kind of, that's not over this season.
Yeah.
But if the balance of it though, like I would say that if the Sharks end the second half of the season kind of where they were at from games 11 to 40 this year, which means there's going to be a little bit of a winning bump, right? And then there's going to be another double-digit losing streak, maybe. That I think I think that's probably good enough with this team.
I think I would give him another year. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I think so because I think he's been a good shepherd for the rebuild. I don't really see a question in my mind about that. And then this team's not very good. So
Yeah, I mean, unless there's some sort of direction change in the off season where you're suddenly trying to win games or whatever, which I don't think is coming yet.
and that'll be worse, because this
yeah.
team doesn't have the cap space, doesn't have any
Yeah,
of that to
I
like
agreed.
to change the direct. This is the right direction, and it is
gonna
going to
be
be
a
painful.
while.
This is what a rebuild looks like, right? Like a lot of fans have been demanding it, and this is what a rebuild looks like, and it doesn't have to look like as bad as it did in the Vancouver and Philadelphia and Toronto games, but there are going to be games like that, though. I don't think I don't think there's going to be any rebuilding team that hasn't had games that they just were absolutely smoked. They didn't have it, and when you don't have it against good teams, you get smoked.
Yeah.
You get embarrassed. To be honest, yeah.
It's going to be rough because I honestly I do think the Sharks are going to start playing a little bit better. I think the last two games have shown like a little, and they're bad teams, right? Montreal and Ottawa are bad teams,
right?
But I think they're going to play a little bit better. They have a little bit easier of a schedule, upcoming than they did in the beginning. So it's going to be tough to keep pace with Chicago for the tankathon standings and get Macklin Celebrini, but. It would be cosmic irony if we got second to last in the NHL and then still won the lottery anyway.
So. Yeah, it'll be well deserved.
Deserved.
It'll be well deserved. So
and
hopefully that happens. Yeah.
Hopefully, or we all accept that Chicago's in the lottery and it's fine. I don't know. I originally I would be on train fire Quinn, but I think throughout the season, there have been bright spots, and I want to see how he does with some of the guys that get called up, like Mukamadula and Agushin after the trade deadline, to really see what he's also going to be able to see what he's working with going forward too.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, so again, so on that question, should he be brought back this year? Should he be fired or should he be brought back next season? Should he be fired this year? I think those are the two questions that I think are worth pondering. Again, how good do you really think this team is? And is he a good coach, the right coach for a rebuild? So again, you got to think long term with that kind of stuff, I think. So it's not about a 12-game losing streak or 11-game losing streak.
Was it ever occasionally NHL teams will announce they've signed X, Y, and Z coach to this many years or whatever? Was it ever announced with that for Quinn? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I gotta look back on that. Yeah, usually
some teams do that.
That sometimes it's announced. Pierre LeBrun often has that that info because I think he knows like he's more tied in with like coaches, agents, and whatnot. I believe that his contract is probably the standard, which is 3 years. So
yeah, so that'd be another year.
But then you usually don't want to have that lame duck year, right? So I wonder if that's important. Like this summer, we get a sense of if there's any kind of extension or whatnot, you know. So so he doesn't have to go into like a season again,
without
a
lame contract.
Yeah, without a contract the next year. So
yeah, but it'd be hard to. I mean, yeah, who knows to extend him during the season where you have the worst season ever. I don't know.
You get some PR flack, but it's not that big a deal. I mean, how long did Blashill last in Detroit, right? So so
yeah. I like Quinn. I think his post games are really open and honest. And
oh sure, yeah, no,
he's
terrific.
Insights.
And I think he's done a good job of staying patient too, in general, right? You don't see him, you don't see him flip on his younger players, on his media, right? And privately, I don't get a sense that he does that either. And so I think that if that's what you're looking for, like if you're looking for somebody to like kick chairs over and get Willie Mecklin going that way, okay, then he's not that guy, right? But I don't know if you want that guy to be coaching your younger players, especially this day and age where that's not sort of what people do as much anymore anyway. So, but yeah, and if you look back even further back than his NHL career, he has formed, close relationships with a Jack Eichel, right? I think Brady Tkachuk too. He coached too, and so I think that he has a track record with younger players that extends before the NHL, and it makes me again still think that the stuff again the Ranger stuff, a lot of that is just fan overblown fan stuff, and yeah, that indeed, I think I don't know. So far, that's that. I haven't heard anything different that that he's not a good coach for these younger players.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Lafreniere is going to top out at like some sort of 0.5 point per game player or something like that, and Kako is like,
who knows,
not
right?
good. But
so
yeah, I don't know. It does seem like it's just overblown Twitter drama that was out there for a while. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, look at another guy that people kind of sneak in there is Kravtsov. Look what he's done. Nothing.
Oh yeah.
And then if you look past those high profile guys, there's actually you start to see a lot of successes in actually with the younger players, and a couple of them directly attributable to Quinn.
Well said. And speaking of young players, we have an interview with Chris Peters coming up. I am all about the transitions today. This was pretty good. But no, it's a very good interview. Anything else to say for this week before we wrap up and get to it?
Nope. Yeah, it is a great interview. Like I promised. Chris gives you a real opinion. It's not. It's not. How do you say? It's not too sanitized. It's I think a very sober is right. It's a very sober look at the Shark system, which I really like. And so yeah, I don't like the sort of the prospect fetishization, overhype, that sort of thing.
He does hype up Daniil Gushchin for a minute there too. So I will
Ah,
say
well, there you
that
go.
there is
And
a
yeah, so
moment.
he knew how to speak to you though. He knew his audience.
Yep.
So
Yeah, he pre-planned that thing. Anyway, hope you guys have a good week. We'll talk to you later. Bye. Chris Peters, NHL Draft and Prospects analyst for FloHockey and senior content creator, joins us today to talk all about the ending of the World Junior Championship in Sweden just last week. So we're going to talk a little bit about the San Jose Sharks prospects that were in the tournament. And welcome, Chris, for the first time on the San Jose Hockey Now podcast.
not the first time. He's been actually a multi-time guest on the previous version. So.
See, but I wasn't there, so it doesn't count.
Yeah,
it doesn't count.
It
Does not count. It does not count. So first with Keegan, and I'm happy to be here. It's good. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a whirlwind 48 hours or so, but glad to be with you.
How long is the flight back to Iowa? And I have to imagine that you're not a direct flight from
no direct Scott from Gothenburg to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. No, I went on the way there. I went through Frankfurt, Germany, and then in Chicago, and then on the way back, I went through Brussels and then Chicago. So I got to go to Belgium for about an hour, and then
nice.
And then come home. But yeah, it was. I think it was like something like 7 on the way back. It was like 14 hours of total travel time. It actually worked out pretty well. But I think on the way there was like 17, and I was like, oh, man. And then I got there about 2 hours before USA's first game. So I was like, right to work. So
and now you're back immediately.
Now I'm back
to work.
Yeah, I'm back and to work.
Now back and back to work.
No, it's getting to be the busy season where you got to watch hockey 12 hours a day. It sounds like.
Yeah,
pretty much. So let's go in, because I know we got just a little bit of time with you. Let's talk about the gold medal winning Team USA, and specifically the two Sharks prospects first that were on the team, Will Smith and Eric Polkamp. Will Smith, he's kind of had a little bit of let's call it like a divisive tournament, but people have had differing opinions on his effectiveness this tournament. How did you see from him? What did you see? How did you like his game?
So here's the interesting thing about the World Juniors is, the Will Smith is 18, right? So he is not a veteran of this tournament. He hasn't played in it before. He doesn't have he didn't play in a world championship. This is the World Juniors is such a step up from anything any of these guys are used to, that there's got to be some adjustment period. Like Logan Cooley was great last year as an 18-year-old, but he had played in a World Juniors before, so he had played as an underager. Will Smith was one of the last cuts last year. He got sick in camp, didn't make the team as an underager, but he was very much in the mix to do so. And so who knows what would have happened with that. What I would say is that in the early stages of the tournament, he looked young. He looked young, and he looked a little bit unsure, which is not something that we're used to seeing from Will Smith. And so that was one part of it. He didn't necessarily have that dynamic swagger that we're used to seeing him play with. And I think part of that was because the tournament was a lot harder. Like Norway actually gave USA one of their toughest games of the whole tournament. And that was their first game. And I think that kind of put a lot of guys on their back foot right away, because it was a physical game. It was very intense. But Will Smith, I think if people were expecting him to be the tournament leading goal scorer or leading point guy after he had a record under 18 world championship, maybe you would be disappointed. But he had points in 6 of the 7 games that he played in there. He had 2 assists in the most important game of the year. He had a goal and an assist in the second most important game. And the thing is that he was playing in a role that was unfamiliar to him. He was essentially the third line center for this team. So he wasn't playing 18 minutes in the game. He wasn't playing his normal role. He was on the second power play unit. And that's no knock on him. It's just that they had older players that had been in this experience before that were a little bit better prepared, Cutter Gauthier included, who plays with them at Boston College. and they went with those guys more heavily. I would say defensively, there are still elements of risk in Will Smith's game. He needs to have better defensive intensity, no question. However, would it surprise you to know that he was the second leading faceoff man in the entire tournament? Will Smith, who is not a big guy, who's not known for his strength, the faceoff is often an area where strength, quickness, skill, all those things matter, but strength probably above all helps you win those draws. He had the second. He won over 60% of his faceoffs, and ended up taking a lot of big faceoffs. And in the goal that Zeev Buium scored, that basically put the game out of reach, they actually had Gabe Perreault take that faceoff, and so it was kind of interesting to see, like, how they use Will Smith in the faceoff. But he ends up in the position to make the pass to Zeev Buium, and then it's over. So I thought that he played for his age group. Like, if you would have said, like, I would not have said he was a disappointment, even if he didn't have the points that he did in the medal round. I thought he played fine. Like, did he wow you? No, but I think that's the standard that has been set, is that Will Smith is this superstar in the making. But he's still filling out physically, finding his game in terms of his competitiveness and intensity. And this was a game where time and space was not easy to come by, but he still managed to put up 9 points in the tournament, almost quietly.
That compete and intensity, it seemed to raise itself when it mattered the most. I was just talking about the Finland game. His goal was directly based off his work, his defensive work, his back check, and his forecheck. If you look at that play, and so that's got to be a good sign that okay, he's a kid. Obviously, consistency, that's always an issue for a lot of kids. But when it mattered, when that defensive intensity was there, it made an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he made a lot of high skill plays. He made plays in traffic. He made plays at the net front. He made good decisions with the puck. I mean, I think we saw all the hallmarks of his game. And I think that the thing is if you look at the usage, you could see that clearly the coaching staff didn't have as much faith in their ability on the other side of the puck. So they weren't going to get the matchups. They were, and the U.S. ended up with the last change throughout the playoff round. So when David Carl didn't have a matchup he didn't like, he pulled them off, or so that happened too. So it was interesting. It was an interesting tournament, but I think that the thing is, for me, is that Will Smith, even in a diminished role, had 9 points in 7 games. As an 18-year-old. So that to me is what stands out, is that he always finds a way to make an impact.
Now he's got a little bit of a reputation as like a big game player, right? With like last year's U18, good gold medal winning goal, basically. And this year he's got 2 assists that were like vital to their success for winning that gold medal. So I mean, he stepped it up. Even despite like a slow start, he really did come on, I think, in the medal rounds. There's a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of debate between Leonard, Perreault, and Smith in terms of like who's the better NHL prospect that I think we're just going to have for like the next 10 years. But
I mean, I think the Sharks should be trying to figure out every way they can to make a Sedin trade for Perreault and Leonard. So
that's
right.
I mean, at least Perreault. I think Perreault and Smith have such a chemistry together. Leonard is obviously just like, you could put him on a line and he'd be great because he's individually very good.
Yeah, he is so underrated. I think that Leonard is so underrated for what he brings to those 2 players. And it's clear how much they value him, for sure.
Yeah, well, if you're a Sharks fan, do you still feel pretty good about Will Smith as your number 4 pick then, based on what you saw at World Juniors? And even this season.
I mean, I think the thing about Will is that it's always about a longer term projection. Like, if I'm the Sharks, I'm not signing him this year.
Yeah.
I'm saying go back for another year of school, get stronger, get better, be a dominant player, play with your 2 guys for another year, and make the most of it. Because I think that there's still development to be had there, and that when he's most prepared, and when the Sharks are maybe in a little bit of a better position as an organization to accept a player of his caliber and insulate a player of his caliber, then I think that's ultimately the best thing. So I wouldn't be worried about it at all. I mean, I really think that, Gabe is always probably going to have more points. It's just fun, but Will is going to have as much or more of an impact. So that's where I see that. I do view Will as a primary driver for whatever line he ends up on.
2 more questions on Will real quick. First, I guess, is do you see him as a center in the NHL? There's also talk of like maybe he moves to wing.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting, and I think that'll be a debate. The thing to me is he is a center. I think that his ability to drive play, you want him to have the puck as much as possible. I think that he can continue to develop the defensive elements of his game and increasing that defensive intensity and different things that will allow him to be a better center. But I think that this tournament was another affirming moment that he is a legitimate center. That he can drive play and that he can make things happen from the middle of the ice.
And the second question is, do you see him coming back next year for the World Juniors?
I do. I do. And I think that if I'm San Jose, I want to be patient with him. I don't think there's much sense in rushing him. And I think that the opportunity to go back for an additional World Juniors, to be part of a national championship contending team at BC, if they don't, maybe they win it this year, but to be part of that, maybe to play in the men's World Championship next year as well. Different things that can kind of allow him to take steps that we saw like Cutter Gauthier take this year. Like you look at Cutter Gauthier's last World Juniors to this World Juniors, and you'll see the marked difference in his game. Part of it's the physical strength, but I think a lot of it is experience. And I think if I'm the Sharks and if I'm Will Smith, I'm thinking about arriving ready as opposed to arriving early. And I think that another year will allow him to arrive ready.
I would guess too that next World Juniors, and you can tell me that he would project to be the number 1 center, and so that would be a good sort of responsibility for him to take on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he would be, and I think he'd play the role that Cutter Gauthier had this year, and he'd be number 1 power play, and that group would be critical to USA's success. And then the other thing is you look at Will in previous instances, he set a record at the under 18 Worlds last year in his second under 18 World Championship, or tied Jack Hughes, and really, I think the expectation would be that he's a dominant player at that next World Juniors, and he can be.
Yeah. Love it. Real quick, we'll talk a little bit about Eric Polkamp. He had a few games there in the group stage. Didn't really get into the medal rounds all that much. What do you think went into that decision to kind of have him sit for the last few games?
I think it was just in the end they were really uncertain between him and Sam Renzel, who was going to be that last right shot defenseman they were really going to lean on. And I think as the tournament progressed, there were a couple of instances where they just had so many of the kind of guys that Polkamp is. And the one thing that I would say that I think is going to be a concern going forward for him is just foot speed. I think that was a marked check against him on this particular blue line, where everyone was really strong in the skating department, including Renzel, who's a 6'6" right shot defenseman as opposed to a 5'11" right shot defenseman. But what I will say is that going into the tournament, I think USA had pretty high hopes that Polkamp could be that 6D, where he and play be an extra potential guy for the power play with his big shot, all those different things. But the fact of the matter is he didn't play a ton, but he still had 3 points in the tournament. He did not play more than 2 shifts over the last 2 games, which essentially was, they didn't really have a choice. They had their rotation and he wasn't going to be part of it. But that, I think one of the other instructive games for him is they were down Seamus Casey, I believe, in the game against Czechia. And so he played more and he played well. Well enough against the Czechs. So, the thing about Polkamp is he's always going to be kind of that longer term guy because he was a re-entry pick last year. He's going to Bemidji State where he's going to play a ton, which I think ultimately will be great for him. He needs to round out his defensive game. He needs to improve his foot speed. And I think he needs to just generally improve, just in a number of areas. But that's what you kind of expect. I mean, the fact that you had a 5th round pick and a re-entry going on this team, is a great thing for him, a tremendous experience for him, and now he can go back to Bemidji State and kind of be the guy there, and with this experience under his belt.
Everybody took notice of his point shot, and he just has a really great shot.
He can hammer it, no question.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little. Go ahead.
I'm sorry about that. I asked Stephen Ellis this a couple of weeks ago. Bemidji State Beavers, best college hockey D1 team name out there. What do you think?
I mean, it certainly is alliterative, and so I like that about them. Bemidji. I just like saying Bemidji. I just think saying Bemidji, period, is
Bemidji
fun.
is great, right? It starts off great and it ends with
with
Beavers.
Yep,
love it.
Yep.
Let's talk about the silver medal winning team Sweden, also featuring 2 Sharks prospects. And Sheng, you had one question, not about a Sharks prospect.
Yes.
Right away.
So in my best Aunt May Spider-Man voice, when she discovers that Peter is Spider-Man, what the fuck, Jonathan Lekaramaki MVP? Make that make sense, Peter.
The tournament was in Sweden.
Okay.
And the MVP is voted on by the media. And the media at the tournament was predominantly Swedish. But one thing I will say, though, like Lekaramaki scored so many big goals for that team.
Sure.
And was close in points. I voted for Cutter Gauthier, and even that was like, I don't feel like there was one player in this tournament that said this was my year. Yeah. This was my tournament. Not one. So that was challenging, but Lekaramaki, like, if being the leading scorer on Sweden, also those votes have to be in before the end of the gold medal game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we get until the first period. Okay. Yeah, after the first period.
Okay.
So like like you could have, like that's for the same reason that Trey Augustine probably was the best goalie in the tournament at the end of it, but he only played 4 games. So it's like, what are you going to do? But so that's why it happened.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that part of it. Like, I think the Conn Smythe voting, that's pretty much like with 5 minutes left, or that goes pretty much to the end. If my memory, I never voted on it, but I've been around when people have been voting on it, and so I believe that's the case. I didn't realize with the MVP that it's voted. You said before during the first intermission.
Yeah, basically before the end of the first intermission. Once the second period starts, you can't vote anymore. So.
Yeah, guys, we're in 2024, guys. I think we can tabulate our votes.
We got it's been digital for the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know why we can't just have it be that. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that explains it a little bit better, because I mean, you lose 6-2 in a gold medal game. I know you got a goal, but I mean,
Yep.
Anyway, all
right. Let's go back to Philip Biestad. So Philip Biestad, Sharks prospect from the 2022 drafts. He had a great season in tournament last year, like in the SHL. Had like kind of a breakout year, and then last year paired with Leo Carlson. But this year, both things didn't really go well for him. His SHL play has been down, and internationally, he kind of, I guess I'll say, faded in the medal games. So, what did you see from Biestad? Yeah, what did you see from Biestad?
Nothing. To be honest with you, that was I would say he was probably one of the most disappointing players at this event, based on what he did last year. I think that there are some tremendous physical tools that he has, and he didn't use them enough. I mean, like he got beat on that first USA goal he completely lost Gabe Perreault on that play. And was behind him, and they couldn't, like, he should have been an 18, like with Lekaramaki, Ogren, Oslin, like those guys, like they're gonna get their minutes more than him. But man, no points in the medal round. No, not a ton of shots on goal for a player of his caliber. So I mean, I'd say that it is a bit of a continuation of a disappointing season thus far. The things that I've been concerned about with him is, I've never worried about the size, the speed, the skill. It's just, is the hockey sense there for me, that remains in question. Last year, I thought he played really well. I kind of like forgot how many points he had last year. And then I was like, Oh yeah, he was pretty good at that tournament. But yeah, I mean, I think hats off to Leo Carlson on that one too, because like they were very good together. And now Beastet had an opportunity to do his own thing, and he didn't. So that was a tough one. I think he was probably one of the guys that I wanted to see a heck of a lot more from in this tournament.
Yeah. That's go ahead, Sheng.
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh yeah. So let's get some positives out of the way then. I guess. How was Matthias Havlat? Did you like his game?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think that like many of the Swedish defensemen, the U.S. forwards just ate them up in that game, and he was absolutely one of those guys that didn't have the pushback. Similar with him, really good in the prelims, very average in the medal round. And he is a skilled player, but I have some real concerns about his ability as a 5'11" defenseman, 5'10" defenseman to defend size, to defend power, to defend speed. And so I like the player. I think he's a very intelligent hockey player. I think that he thinks the game very well. I think he can make a lot of plays, but I don't think he has the skill set to be more than a 6 or a 5, with some power play specialty, like that's because he has a bomb too. Like he can really fire it. Like he's got a great shot. He has tools. He has traits. But you look back on this tournament and you're going to say, man, we had that decor and we couldn't get a stop when we needed one. We couldn't shut anybody down. Like, because really even like the Swiss team gave him problems. Like it was a very weird tournament for that Swedish decor, because at the first few games they looked unbeatable. And then towards the end, it was like, like what? They're not that. But I'd say that was a bit of a disappointment, in the end. But I still think that Matthias Havlat is one of those kind of guys where, you're going to have something in him. Is he an NHL player? I think that still remains to be seen.
Wanted to go back to Beastet just a little bit, kind of a temperature check, because last year during the last offseason, we talked with scouts, and obviously Beastet was coming off a strong year, and that draft he was in 2022 was famous for a bunch of Swedes just kind of going all clumped, Swedish forwards going all clumped together in the middle of the first on Lekaramaki, Oslin, Ogren, and then Beastet. And when I talked with people last summer, they would say, maybe I asked you the same question too, in a redraft, does Beastet go ahead of those other Swedes? And most people said, yeah, I think so, because Karamaki had a really tough season last year, and so on, right? But if we do a redraft now, though, is Beastet back to being fourth of that list?
I don't think so. I think he probably still would go behind Lekaramaki and Oslund. Ogren, I think, was another guy that kind of underwhelmed in this tournament. So yeah, that would be like that's the other thing about the redraft too, is you got to be patient with it. Like, sure. I mean, especially a guy like Beastet, like he's a little bit having a down year, but some of those bigger guys are going to take a little bit longer to get to their top level. And they're going to have ebbs and flows, I feel like, because he was just physically better than those three guys last year. But I mean, I would take Oslund's compete. I would take his hockey sense, and his skill. And Lekaramaki has elite scoring ability, and he's also now playing back on more in a game that makes sense to me as a top player compared to what he looked like last year, which was hot garbage for most of the year, to be honest with you. Like he was bad at last year's World Juniors too, and this year he came back, and I think that's a great thing for him. But it also just goes to show you the ebbs and flows of prospects. They are going to make changes. So I don't think that this World Juniors defines Philip Beastet. I certainly don't think it defines his NHL projection. I still feel very strongly that he has power forward written all over him. We're just going to have to wait and see exactly what that ultimately looks like.
How long he has to put everything together.
Yeah, and it could take a while, and it could take time in the AHL, and it could take, years in the NHL to get it right. But you got to be patient with some of these players, and I think Beasted's one of those guys with the physical tools. You'll wait as long as you have to.
Yeah. So we have the Swedish Eric Polkamp and Matthias Avlid, and Beasted is going to take a long time. But all right, let's move on to Team Canada. We had one prospect from the Sharks. We had Jake Furlong, who kind of surprised a little bit as like a defensive stalwart for this team. Did he turn some heads to his pro potential with this tournament, you think?
I don't think so.
Okay. Tell us why.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that he handled himself very well.
Sure.
I think that he scored a goal in that game, but that last game, but I don't, there wasn't any moment in this tournament where I saw, wow, there's and
Sure.
that he's not a defenseman that you would ever expect wow from anyway, right? So I think even though he can point it up in the queue and different things like that, he's got decent size and he defends fine. He's got good mobility. Like there's nothing that, that we saw in this tournament that would suggest, he's on the track of, NHL top 4 or anything like that.
It's just kind of a weaker Canada defensive group in general.
Yeah, well, I think it was a decent decor, but yeah, I don't think they played up to their potential. I think they were a problem area for the team, and especially in the latter stages of that game and against Czechia. But I mean, you got to give them credit because they did keep giving him more. They kept giving him more minutes and more responsibility, more of a role. And yeah, so I mean, I think he's an NHL player. Like I'm not trying to be super negative on him. I just think that, there wasn't anything that we saw in this tournament that wasn't already evident, I don't think.
Yeah. He's the NHL player, but kind of one that plays on bottom pairings or maybe his replacement level kind of thing.
Yeah, like I mean, I think he might be a little bit better than that, but I still think that he's not a guy that I'm, stamping for the top 4,
That's fair enough. I talked with one scout after the tournament, and he called Furlong savvy, but also called him a long shot too. So,
yeah. I mean, like the thing is like there's, to be an NHL defenseman, you have to have, even if it's not wow factor, it's just got to be like something like grabs you and says that's an NHL trait. And I don't necessarily think that I saw that with Furlong.
Yeah. Lastly, because that was our only prospect on Team Canada, we missed out on Luke Cagnoni, who did not get invited. But Team Finland with Kasper Halttunen. Besides Halttunen's shot, what else is going to get him to the next level in terms of like an NHL projectable player? Because it seems like he's been used on the power play exclusively or extensively, and that's about it, including in London as well.
Besides his size too,
and size.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I got nothing for you.
That's it. That's
yeah. So here,
let me tell you this hard for Chris.
Let me tell you about like as a player, he is at times you're just you see the size, you see the shot, you see where he puts himself on the ice, and you say, okay, this guy's got something. This guy has got something. There's something really good there. And the thing is that he is also a player when you see all of that and you say, how come he doesn't do it all the time? How come and you can't score all the time. But the thing is that if he's not scoring, he does not impact the game.
Yeah.
Not that. And I think part of it is there's a very inconsistent compete level, which is really, I was talking to a friend about him when we were watching the bronze medal game, and are like, he is a very frustrating player to watch. Because he has all these tools, like he's got the tools. Like I'm not like, it's, if he puts it together, if he brings that edge, if he brings that little, that fire, I feel like he could be a big time NHL player, which is why I'm not going to write him off, because I think that there are special qualities in his game, and the shot is one of them. But he puts himself in good positions to score. He's very difficult to move with the size. He's not super fast, as you probably heard before, but he can move well enough for his size.
Sure.
And that's to me, I feel like, if he gets a little more want to on the ice, a little bit, get him a little bit more giddy up, a little bit, like just a little more fire and a little more snarl, you're talking about a player that could be a top 6 NHL forward.
Yeah.
But those are a lot of ifs. And that's the thing about him that I've noticed as I watched him, because I still kept him as a first round prospect last year. I think I'd have to go back and look at my rankings.
On the bubble, maybe.
It was right there. Yeah. Right in that range. And I think coming into the year, I thought he was a top 15 pick. But the more you watch a player, the more you can kind of pick them apart. And the thing is that I still feel like everything with him is all tied to compete level. And so that's a concern. Like, that's the thing, is like, it's harder to teach. It's harder to pull out of a player. It's harder to, but sometimes maturity brings that out of a player. There have been plenty of guys that coasted on ability for so long they didn't have to do that. Now he has to do that. I think he's learning that. Maybe he doesn't really have to do that in the OHL because he's just bigger than everybody and he can do what he wants to do. Yeah. But he also wasn't doing it in the pros last year with in Liga. So, what's the right spot for that? And so I think that the Sharks have a project on their hands with a lot of these guys. They're not polished, perfect guys. I think of the players we've talked about, the one I feel most confident about is Bistad. And, obviously we talked about him having a bad tournament, but I still think there's a huge pro potential there. But Halttunen should be in that conversation. He should be, based on ability. But I think we're still waiting for him to reach that ceiling.
Yeah, I got to say, I watched Halttunen, the highlights in London, and his shot is just like bringing a gun to a knife fight. Yeah, so it looks great, but it's a knife fight.
Yeah.
It's still a knife fight, though.
Yeah,
100%.
Exactly. Yeah.
And was it Halttunen last year that had like a dominant U18 tournament? Was it him? I think it was.
He was. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that was, and he was good the year before too. And, we kind of expected that from him. It seems like any age, if he's in his age level, he's dominant, and then he gets outside of it, and it's like, okay, he's a guy. This, to me, I thought he played. There were moments in this tournament where he played great, moments where you didn't notice him at all. That's the thing, is a guy at his size with his shot and all that other stuff, he shouldn't disappear in the games, and he does too often. That's probably my issue.
Yeah, without being on these behind the play a little bit, and
lagging. for sure.
Well, last one for me, Chris. So thank you so much for your time. I just wanted to ask you about just in the rest of the Shark system, if any prospects have just stood out to you this year in your watches, besides the World Junior guys.
I mean, I think, for the Sharks prospects, I got to think about it for a second. So Quentin Musty obviously didn't make the World Junior team. He's still going to have an opportunity next year. I think he'll have a really good chance to be there. I think that he is an intriguing player, and one that will continue to be very, very intriguing. He obviously has to, I think, improve on the pace and everything like that, which will help him. But he's a good finisher, and I think that there's a lot that I like about him. I think that Cam Lund is having a resurgent year at Northeastern as well. He did not make the World Junior team, didn't really even get close. But I think that he's having a better season as a college player, finding his way. I think that that's a good thing as well. Beyond that, I think it was great to see, Magnus Krona get a call up and stuff. I still think there's potential in him. In a system that doesn't have a lot of goaltending.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say a system that doesn't have a lot of defense at AHL level.
Well, that's, that's true. Yeah, it could be. But
Huge
But
faith in big time, though. He's got
yeah,
this.
but I do think, guys like that will still have potential, and I'm just also an unabashed Daniel Gushin guy. Not that I'm, not it's just he's just one of those guys where I saw him when he was a really young player, and he just had that tantalizing skill, and it's great to see that he's contributed at the AHL level, had some opportunities in the NHL, and but yeah, I mean, obviously there's still a ways to go for some of these guys, and that's the thing about with a position that the Sharks are in, they've got to be really, really patient. So
Gushin needs to be like 6 inches taller, 20 pounds heavier, and the dude is
Yeah,
like a perfect NHL hockey player.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, yeah, I'm sure that'll
only
happen
those
tomorrow. So.
only those things. Only those things.
Yeah. No, I mean he really is. I love Gushin, and he has that like it factor sometimes when you go and you look at that guy and you're like, oh, that guy. You know, like he can take over games, especially
you
at the
notice
AHL
him.
level.
Yeah, you notice him at times. Actually, I just thought of one very loud, very, very quick one. Maybe this is actually Keegan might have had this one too, but we had to check with you as the Sharks leading the draft lottery. So Macklin's still your clear number one. No debate in your mind, or is there a debate?
No debate. No debate. I don't think it's close. That being said, I do think that the defense in this draft is very intriguing. The level of defensemen this year is so far, like I think, like David Reinbacher was the first defenseman that went last year. For me, he'd probably be the 5th defenseman this year.
That's about right. Yep.
So that's what we're talking about in terms of. So that's the question is how much do you value it? But to me, Macklin Celebrini is a game changing center, a guy that's going to potentially win the Hobey Baker this year, be a big time player. It'll be interesting to see if he decides to go back to BU for another year. We talked about that with Adam Fantilli last year. Would he go back to Michigan? It was certainly a possibility. And you think if you're the Sharks, what do you want him to come into? Do you want him to come into that situation right away? With a college player, I feel like you have a little bit more flexibility. So I still think, what a story it would be if he did end up in San Jose. I think it could really revitalize the fan base. It could certainly revitalize, the team in a shorter amount of time. It doesn't give you the Connor Bedard level shot in the arm that you would want, but it does give you a cornerstone piece to your rebuild. So, and I think that's a great thing. He's a very, like, I do feel like because he is following Connor Bedard, he's underrated for this year. I think he's very special. And so, I think he's a special person, special player, with a tremendous background. And when he puts it all together on the ice, elite competitor, high-end skill, maybe not amazing at any one particular thing, but just really, really, really good at all of them. And Jay Pandolfo, his head coach, has kind of called him like Diet Crosby or like Crosby Light.
Yeah.
It sounds stupid. It sounds stupid, right? Like how could anybody be? But I do feel like that there is some validity, because Sid is not like, you look at him and it's like, is he okay? Maybe he has the best backhand in the NHL, but what else? Like, what else is he the best at?
The brain, I guess.
Yeah, the brain could be. Yeah. But but I think that Mac is high end. So So keep dreaming, San Jose. Keep dreaming.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
My question is, who is Mexican Sugar Crosby then? Because that's the only Coke that I drink. So.
The natural cane, cane. Yeah, that I
don't drink that corn syrup shit. So yeah,
I can't help you there. So, all right,
I love it. Let's anything else? Anybody that you want to shout out from the tournament? Any prospect at all that you want to talk about? But we should probably get you out of here soon. Anybody?
Not really. I mean, I think we covered it pretty well there. I just think that this was, I think the other thing is, like, for draft people is, Zeev Buium's stock has risen considerably. Had 5 points in the tournament for USA, playing basically as a third pairing defenseman, but still getting good minutes. And, he's all of a sudden, we're talking about him as a potential top half of the first round guy, as a sub 6 foot defenseman. Pretty good. So, so we'll see. But Sharks, I think that there's
Sharks need a blue liner for sure.
Yeah. And he's certainly dynamic in that regard. And I think, there's a lot there. So,
All right, Chris, anywhere you want to shout out or anything you want to say before we get you out of here?
Just FloHockey.tv. Lots more stuff. I'm for putting all my postmortems together. Have a few more World Junior things coming out, mostly on Team USA, and An all disappointment team probably. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I don't want to be mean in the new year. I don't want to be mean in the new year.
Yeah.
But
sounds
anyway,
like there might be a few Sharks on that list.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway, yeah. But thanks for having me, guys. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks.
Chris.
See you guys.